Hi, everyone. I am here today on Just One Thing. I've got a very, very interesting guest joining me today, Sandra Ruiz. Anna, you have been working for over 12 years at Spotify, really helping it to build and grow Spotify from 9 million subscribers to over 300 million subscribers. I know we've talked previously. You got a super interesting story, a lot of insights and experiences to share with the growth industry. I will also say before we get started, I think what's even more impressive to me is you spent nearly 3 years at Skype, which was, for me, a beloved platform, a beloved brand that I lived off of for at least 10 years. So thank you for joining me on Just One Thing. I love to get into it with you.
Thank you for having me. Excited about our conversation.
So, I mean, 12 years at Spotify. I've got your profile here. You started as a conversion manager on the growth team. You moved up to a director of head of international premium growth, a senior director of global head of growth. It's just very impressive. And I know we've talked previously. You've got a lot of insights and a lot of experiences. Just start by telling us a little bit about your background.
Sure. My background is actually I started in finance and private equity. Worked there for 4 years. Had my own startup as well in cell phone recycling. Had an MBA, and then after that, like you said, spent 3 years at Skype. Super interesting experience there as well. And last 12 years at Spotify, always in the growth team, very focused on premium growth. And it's been an amazing journey. I joined when we were around 1,000 employees. And yeah, I know all this time we've now just hit 293 million subscribers. So it's just been a phenomenal over 30x growth. And we're over 7,000 employees now. So it's just been an amazing story to be part of.
Mm. It's companies like Spotify in the world that have had just success, growth and success and growth and success. I would love to kind of start to unpack a little bit of like what's behind it. It's easy to look at Spotify and just say, boy, I remember when those early days of Spotify and then Apple came out with Apple Music and they were competing. But like Spotify has just been such an incredible success story over the years. It's just been ongoing growth. It's been an incredible platform democratizing music in a way that makes it accessible to everyone. And it's just also like one of these brands that just has such a very strong positive reputation. You've been there for so long, like I'm not even sure where to begin. Maybe, help us understand like
Yeah.
what's behind the growth of Spotify all these years.
So early on, we were seeing, hey, phenomenal growth on the free side. We're struggling a little to grow on the premium side. What are some of the challenges and how can we address them? Mexico, Brazil being a couple of them, and just conversion there wasn't really working. I dove into the market and looked at across the whole space what was going on. We did focus groups. We reviewed absolutely everything in the funnel. On the one hand, the awareness wasn't there, the understanding wasn't there, the messaging was off. Some of it was even just like basics, hygiene, payments, friction, trial mechanics that weren't necessarily working. We implemented new local payment methods, basically changed all of the different messaging to make sure it adapted. It resonated from a local perspective, and the value prop was something that had appeal. And then we also tested different offers that worked extremely well, and the markets took off. And in a space of a year and a half, we had 5x the market. And so that was an amazing accomplishment. And we realized you absolutely need to have a local go-to-market approach for premium, and it became basically our playbook for all of the other markets. After that, basically, I set up the from scratch and scaled the international premium team to a 40 people team with hubs across everywhere: APAC, LATAM, Europe, North America, and we also basically started to launch a bunch of other markets, right? And for all of those launches, the premium go to market was something that I and our team needed to figure out. So that included Indonesia, India, Korea, Japan, all of Middle East, all of Africa. And it's just been phenomenal to see the growth and to see how we gained some of those early learnings that would became our playbook for all of the local go-to-markets we developed for premium. And it's been truly a key element of driving growth there. Boots on the ground is what we call it. We have hubs across all of our regions, and it's a set of primarily growth marketeers that are really focused on end to end. What are the funnel frictions that I need to unlock? Is my premium value prop resonating at a local level? When we launched the different markets, we were also going in to understand what's the competitive space, how do we differentiate, what's the pricing required, what are the propositions required. We can also talk a little bit about that later, and fleshing out anything that would need local adaptation. So a ton of work we've done on the payments front, for example. In Philippines, we only had credit cards available. Credit cards had back at, a decade ago, 2% penetration in this market. You were not going to go anywhere with that. So we launched carrier billing. And with time, and that was a huge unlock. And we realized, okay, obviously payment methods need to be localized. And that became a key part of our playbook for all of the other, subsequent markets that we've launched. Propositions has been another one as well, where particularly in APAC markets, prepaid is pretty important. So we've launched prepaid formats in some of these markets. We've tested a lot of stuff as well. And some of that also became a key playbook for us in the sense that we would use the local markets to test and then scale what would be successful at a global level and make it become a system, part of our overall conversion engine. And so that has been something that has worked really well for us. As an example, in Mexico, the first example I was mentioning, and in Brazil, over a decade ago, we launched these 3-month free offers. At the time, our offers were not as appealing. And we tried this offer and worked so well. We realized, well, this could really be something powerful. We then tested it in a bunch of additional markets, including US, and it just, flew through the roof. And lo and behold, it became then the global standard for us. And with time, it actually became the industry standard. So it's now pretty common to see a lot of the media companies offering 3-month free trials. So that's a good example of how we test locally, we see something works really well, and then we scale it globally. Referral program's another one where it originally started as a hacky project for us in Australia for students. And slowly but surely we realized, hey, this has good legs. And eventually we went from that hacky project to actually launching a referral program globally and now having it drive over 1 million subscribers at a given year. And so super important to have the local boots on the ground for a bunch of reasons. One, they're the ones that understand the market very deeply, the user really well, all of the challenges, all of the nuances. They work extremely closely with all of the other functions on the ground. And so you can develop very fleshed out local market strategies, which is critical if you want to be really winning in a market and resonating as a local brand. And at the same time, we have very strong ties to our global teams to make sure that wherever we want to have, wherever we need global efficiencies, we're actually tapping on that. So we'll have operator tooling that, we'll build at a global level. We'll have some campaigns that we'll do at a global level. All of our performance marketing we continue to do at a global level. And a lot of the work on the payments side, we've done locally originally. Eventually, we've actually scaled it to become also global. Basically, that balance between making sure you're extremely local, but also having the efficiencies of global and having that strong connection between the two teams is really important so that you can be a very local brand, but also tap your global efficiencies.
It's super interesting. The thing that really stands out for me more than anything is you really built first, sort of two things. One is there was a very significant level of trust given to you, your team, others to go and figure this out. So much trust and responsibility given to you. Like, what was the nature of the company in the early days where they would bring you in or others in and say, "Go figure it out," right? And that's kind of the first thing, like the level of trust in growth and growth team and marketing to like go and figure out how to significantly grow this business, right? That's kind of the first thing that really stands out for me. And the second is that, I mean, there was I mean, it sounds like there was so much, like, was it pre-designed? Was this approach pre-designed, or was it you're starting, like, how do we tackle a local market, and you start to figure it out, and then you go, wait a second, we are unlocking this market. We're 5Xing Mexico. We're 5Xing Brazil. Let's take this playbook and see if we can replicate it. And I just think about the level of organization around that, as well as, like, really stands out from what you've shared. So what was it like in those early days when, when management said, "Let's put this team together, go figure this out," and then to be able to have the space to be able to then figure it out and then apply this to other regions?
It's 100% how you said it. First of all, was indeed how it was indeed very organic in how it shaped up. It wasn't like premeditated, oh, we need all of these local teams. Now let's go and build out. It actually started with that first project where we realized we need this local expertise to really drive that local premium growth. And with that, organically, we started to grow. As we started to grow, so it was just myself, a person for LATAM, a person for APAC, covering all of those regions and really having to handpick the two key markets we wanted to address. And like you say, really a white piece of paper to figure out, okay, where are my issues? Where are my biggest unlocks and opportunities? So a lot of leeway to go and figure out. And then being very hacky, being very scrappy to unlock resources wherever needed to actually get some of these things done, because we didn't have any payments people. We were the ones just waving the flag of, hey, we need this payment method, and the product team globally would implement that, but they were running around doing a million other things. Hey, we need actually a prepaid proposition in this market because it's incredibly prepaid heavy. So like you say, it was definitely figuring out along the way, being really scrappy. Having one of the key things I did was hire for folks that had very strong business acumen, huge bias for impact, and very creative and resourceful. And so that they could, like you say, it was pretty broad. It was looking at the whole funnel and figuring out where are the deltas. So that it had to be folks that could really flex in different shapes and forms. Hey, we have an awareness issue. Let's go and do a brand campaign and work maybe with our global marketing colleagues for some guidance on that. And the reality is that there were very few resources at the time. So it was also very heavy figuring out how to do it locally, and also influencing if we needed product at the time to do some of those changes. Obviously, through time, we realized as well this works, so we started to put more structure on it. And so we had the local hubs where we started to hire more people, and some of the functions started to flesh out. So we had a payments person. We started to hire payments people for all of our different hubs. Eventually, actually, there was a bigger payments team, so that got centralized. But it was all organic, as we figured out the key unlocks that were going to drive growth for us. Similar with propositions as well. Okay, propositions is an important part. When I joined, we had student. Family was there, but it didn't really, it only took off a little bit later. We eventually then launched Duo. Those are things that the global team launched. But at the beginning, when we were trying to identify opportunities like prepaid or like mini plans for daily or weekly, it was very much the boots on the ground, the folks on our team, identifying these and flagging them to make sure that we were getting the resources to actually implement them. And then the other thing I would say is, like you said, a lot of coordination. In general, I think at Spotify, we're very strong on collaboration, and it reflects particularly in this role where you need to collaborate really deeply at a market level. And you also need to collaborate really, really strongly globally. For the time that I've had overall growth within my remit, global growth, local growth, also product, that strong coordination really comes to life in a very effective way, because you can also then identify issues or opportunities you have at a local level and very quickly move the resources at a global level to make sure that they're getting addressed. And likewise, when you're experimenting and finding things that are working really well locally, you can also elevate them and, and blow them up for the whole world faster. So a lot of coordination there that needs to happen. And that's the beauty of it.
This playbook that you ended up building, like imagine a lot of time, a lot of sweat, a lot of tears, a lot of focus. Once you had that playbook and you go, oh my God, wait, this is really working. Let's now apply this to other regions and see how it works. Was it as simple as it just simply works and you just now keep applying it to other regions? Was there some additional level or layer of like testing, adaptation? What was that? Like what was that like when you really expanded it to other regions?
Combination in the sense that definitely the playbook worked. And so we scaled it and we saw that boulder roll down. As we got more people, we were also able to, tackle more markets, do more things in the market. And with most of the things we were doing, we're seeing phenomenal results. So we were also then just, hiring more and growing more for that. At the same time, one of the things that is critical of this team is that it's continuously looking for the deltas and testing into them to see what else we can unlock. So you can think about it like a playbook portfolio of different tools in the toolkit, and some of them are more mature and you're like, yeah, this is a winner. We know it works really well. For example, for us, offer-led campaigns work really well. You drive them in the market, they resonate locally because they're based on seasonality and also local marketing moments. And we, that's a pretty mature like tool in the toolkit. And then there's others that you're testing into and you're figuring out, hey, does this work? Payment methods is another one that is also just longer. It takes maybe longer to launch. And most of the times actually seeing a big impact, but not always. Sometimes we launch a new payment method and we realize subscription is not a great fit for that payment method. So the trials that you use need to adapt and you need to qualify maybe the intake better because your retention is otherwise not working out as good. We've seen that a lot in Asia, for example, with, wallets and some of carrier billing. So we've adapted a lot of our offers based on that. So there is definitely that trial testing, and for some of our maybe more newer things we're trying out to see if that is something that has legs. For example, we've been testing out last year, increasing a little bit the friction on the free side and at a local market level in Indonesia, for example, and that worked really well. And that's something we're now going to scale globally. But there's like that one, there's many others that, maybe didn't work out so well. So we then stopped doing them. And I guess all of that to say it's a boulder that in aggregate rolls down very yes. We hired a big team because we were seeing really good gains from every single person that was coming in. And at the same time, there's still tons of potential and opportunity in certain markets that we could be doing better in. Our proposition could resonate more. So how do we build that up further? For example, in some of our APAC markets, we're building our cultural membership for fans, meaning we're doing a tons of activities on the ground to connect our premium users more with artists in real life experiences, meets and greets, listening parties, voting, and all of that to enhance that premium proposition because we realize there's a bunch of markets that might need more of that. So of course there's like different things that we continue to test. Some of them work better, them don't work. Some of them work only locally and they stay locally. Some of them are so phenomenal we want to scale globally. So then when you double click into the different markets, it's a bit of a mixed bag. And even within each market, some strategies are very mature, very successful. We continue to do them. And others are exploratory, new, they work better or less better. And depending, on that, we will ship them globally or sunset them or
Mm,
continue, but just locally.
mm. Let me start with this. Your passion for what you're doing and Spotify really comes out very clearly. But I'm going to ask this question anyway, because maybe it applies to you, maybe it applies to others who have been on this growth team. I mean, it's been a long time. 12 years is a very long time. a career in tech, just full stop. How do you keep it interesting for yourself and for others maybe that you manage on your team that have been there for a long time? How do you keep it interesting?
Honestly, every year is completely different. So it feels from the outside, it might feel like many years of the same thing. And from the inside, I can tell you every year it's been a different challenge, a different approach, new things that we were testing and scaling, new in my case, new remit that, got incorporated. I was learning about performance marketing came into my remit. So dove into that for several years. Then product and product led growth as well. Have been doing that for a couple of years and really leaning into that. And then at a market level, like I mentioned, the strategies evolve. And there's at different points in time, you're then realizing you need different things. So the nature of the job changes a lot. Now, for some of our more mature markets, we're starting to think about, okay, what are some of the new strategies we need to be thinking about as we are approaching more maturity in some of these markets? Retention starts to be something that is really important for us because the volume of retention today matters. A few years ago, it was all about acquisition. That's where all of the volume was. And today, actually, retention in very big user bases, like the ones we have in some of our most mature markets, starts to matter. So we dive into that a lot. We have new plans that we can upsell users onto. So we start to think about monetizing users further and how do we expand the LTV for our different users. And so for me personally, it's been an amazing journey. And I think we have quite a long tenure within Spotify, I would say in general, and also in particular in my team. And I think it's because of that. The nature of the job is pretty broad and changes quite a bit every year because there are different challenges that you're facing as time goes by. And in my case, particularly, also, it's just been very rewarding to learn about different parts of the business and have that, all come together under one growth unit.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I completely understand it. I appreciate, kind of what you're saying. Uh, Marketing is there was a point in my life when I moved to the Bay Area from LA, and I said, "Okay, I gotta pick a lane, marketing, BD, product." This is kinda like how, from my past experience, and I said, I'm gonna focus on marketing because it's so vast. It's so wide. And if you kinda do it well, do it right, it could be just a ton of fun. Like, you could build a career in marketing and enjoy it and not be too narrow and, working with, like, old playbooks. And I think that's really what it comes down to. It's like, if you get stuck on a playbook and you follow the same playbook that others play, you're not gonna get very far, and it's not very interesting as a marketer when you're working with an old, tired playbook. So, keeping it fresh is key, and marketing is just an incredibly fun space to work in. That's been my experience.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd say is like I don't know if it was the same for you, but for us going into many of these new markets, it was also about category building and getting people to pay in the first place for music because they weren't doing that before. And so that's been incredibly exciting because you're operating on white canvas and need to figure a lot of things out on and myself and the team that I've hired thrives on that. So it just keeps it very interesting every time. And because you're always looking for that delta of opportunity, by nature, it's always going to be different because the goalpost keeps moving. You know what I mean? The other thing that I'd say that for me has been really, really rewarding and interesting to experience. And I don't know if for you it's been similar. I worked a long time very closely with product. For a good chunk of it, it was definitely as a partner, influencing them on the roadmaps, etc. And then for a couple of years, I've also had it within the team. And I think seeing firsthand how you can get marketing and product led growth strategies to be basically crafted together and completely cohesively and compounding each other's actions has been incredibly rewarding. And I think is incredibly powerful in the sense that product led growth is one of the levers that really I see drives a lot of impact on growth. And on top of that, if you can actually then work very closely with your marketing or your growth marketing colleagues to make sure those, the different strategies are all towards like one same goal and are amplifying each other, I've seen amazing results from that.
Yeah, let's click in on that one on product-led growth. I know we talked about it previously. I mean, Spotify is, from my view, famous for some product-led growth initiatives that have just set a new standard, not just in music, but across many different like tech type industries. When you first started going, like, when you first started working with product and around some PLG initiatives, I'm sort of curious, like, in those early days, how did that actually work? 'Cau like, how did it actually work where like, did it work well where they were open, amenable, products open and amenable to ideas and suggestions, and it was through early implementation and having success that it then became more of a formal or structured practice within Spotify?
I think we've had ebbs and flows. So we've had times where we worked more closely together, and then we've had times when product was very busy with other key priorities, and some of the growth requests that we would have, hey, we really badly need this payment method in Indonesia or in Brazil or in Nigeria, is like a bit of a headache for them, because they're like, no, but I need to rebuild my whole payments platform, or I need to rebuild the whole, I don't know, different initiatives that we would have at a company level. So I think the key there is to make sure you're sharing the context, you're also continuing to influence, and also sometimes having patience. So I would say at times it's been, trickier, and not because for lack of goodwill, but really because like the priorities were very different. And I think that's why when you want to have a key focus area around growth as a company, if you can bring those functions to work very closely together in unified goals, it's incredibly powerful, because I've seen it firsthand. And then we've had other times where we're rolling, and we're rolling because, hey, our payment stack is now up to scratch, and you tell me all of the payment methods that you need in the world, or you got them tomorrow. And one of the things that I haven't mentioned, but that we've all through the time I've been here, we've talked a lot about, is like, what are our big rocks? What are the key unlocks? And I'm making sure that at a team level, that's clear, and not just at a team level on my level, a broader team level and broader company level. Then that's incredibly powerful. What are those big rocks at that moment? Now we call them big bets. Before there was big rocks, and then you have your pebbles, and yeah, you might do some of those as well. But we need to launch our duo plan because we know it's going to be a huge unlock, or our new family plan. We want to make sure we launched the whole world. That was a huge undertaking for the company. We decided to, up until that moment, we had been launching markets one by one, and we decided to launch the rest of the world in one go. Huge undertaking, big rock for us. And so, you get everyone rallying towards that same goal. And so I think when you can get to do that, and those and they're aligned in terms of goals, then it's really powerful.
So when the company got to the point when you were, like, establishing big rocks, were these at a company level?
Not always it has to be at a company level. Sometimes it's just at an org level. And on product-led growth, yeah, we have several examples that where we've done phenomenally. Uh, Wrapped, one
It's
of
a
the
favorite
biggest
of mine.
ones.
It's favorite
I know
ever.
you and I were talking about it the other day. That's a
I
favorite.
love
And
Wrapped.
fun fact, it started as a marketing campaign. And so I love the example of Wrapped because it also shows how through iteration and continuous testing and building up, you compound the efforts with time. Wrapped started really in 2015 as a microsite that marketing wanted to do as a campaign. They used to do a year in review before, I think, and then basically decided to do this microsite. It had good, it had a good outcome. And then I think for two more years or so, it continued being done as a microsite, very much product, very much marketing led, until we decided, okay, we need to bring this in house. It has to be, and product then worked on it and launched it as an in-app experience with all of the data stories. It's been growing with time. It's now not only for the users, it's for, artists, our authors. I get tons of different stories. And this year we beat records with 300 million engagers, over 600 million shares. And I mean, it's just been phenomenal. And what I also like most about that story is that it shows how, like, maybe can start small, but you see something that is working really well, and you invest in it, and, tweak it, iterate it, and it compounds with time to become something, amazing like today
It's
Wrapped is.
huge, it's huge,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
For anybody listening or watching, Wrapped is at the end of the year, it's I mean, from my in layman's terms, it's the Spotify sharing with you what you listen to artists that you've listened to the most over the course of the year that we all then share on social. I mean, it's just it's so it's and it's so when I really kinda, like, think deeply about Wrapped and like, it's something that as we get I can speak for myself and my friends who are into music, as we get close towards to the end of the year, I think about it. I'm waiting. It's like I'm waiting for Coachella to release the lineup. I'm waiting for Spotify to release my Wrapped, of like everything that the top artists I listen to throughout the year. It's amazing things are it's amazing that it has such a psychological effect. It's something that I look forward to. I start thinking about it as I get closer to the year. All our friends are sharing and commenting on it. As somebody who I'm very, very passionate about music, I absolutely love music more than anything. It's really meaningful. I can't think of any other PLG type initiative that has had the effect of that Wrapped has had, I mean, candidly.
Yeah, I agree. And at the same time, I think when I think about PLG and like, how do you invest in it? Wrapped is there now today, yeah, at the scale that it is because of all of that journey that it had. So when you think about your product-led growth tactics that you're trying, that you're trying out, for me, it's like a portfolio. Again, similar to what we were talking about for the regions. You have some of your product-led growth tactics that are extremely mature, like Wrapped. Phenomenal success. Yes, you're going to continue investing and doubling down on it year after year. Then you have some that are maybe already in the middle of the journey, like referral program. It started several years ago with a very hacky test for student referral in Australia. Then, we launched it globally for our main product. At the beginning, it didn't even have a placement in the product. It was more like a site actually. And so from more from a marketing perspective, and then we've launched it actually in the app with a proper like space for it. And we're starting to build programs around it. And it still has a lot of room to grow and like continue maturing as a product like growth tactic. And then you have younger ones like last year in-app voting is something we shipped, and in-app voting has had a lot of traction in some of our markets in APAC where we'll do music awards, and this is a key part of that experience, both for free users but also for premium users. And so that is in its infancy, similar to listening parties for fans. It is in, we've launched it, we've seen it has good momentum. We're starting to invest much more in it and scaling it, and so it's like building up. And that one actually is a really nice example of a product-led growth together with marketing working extremely closely together to bring this to life. And so for me, I think about product-led growth as a portfolio and, with different levels of maturity of some of the different tactics. And then you have some that are super nascent and you're just still starting to figure out, if that can be a good idea or not. But
Mm.
yeah.
So I know we're kind of coming, coming towards, close to time here. Um, the one last question I have is because I have so many friends across like the industry, like the mobile, the tech industry, who are like in a growth marketing role, senior, mid, and I know that like one of the bigger challenges often is growth teams and product teams being very closely aligned and being able to align around priorities and to work together to implement strategies and initiatives within the product that will really help drive growth. And I am just sort of curious, like, again, kind of going back to that, your experience at Spotify, not in the beginning, but 12 years, like, how do you, people come and people go and people, they come to a company with their own experiences, their prior experiences, and they can maybe, maybe they have, there's been less collaboration with the growth team, from prior experiences. How do you sustain that? Like, how is that continued? How does it work? Is it like from the top down commitment and relationship building and commitment and that cascades down across the product and growth orgs? How do you sustain that over 12 years? What have you learned?
Some of the things I've learned is what we were talking about earlier, just making sure you're aligned on those key big rocks or bets or however you want to call them at a either company level or wider org level, where both product and growth marketing and everyone else are part of, is super critical, because then it really helps just make the conversation much easier. And one thing that has changed at Spotify through the years that has made that easier is that we're now working much more as synchronized swimming, we call it. So we will have those bets at a basically company level, and we make sure that we're aligned on those. And so it makes the conversation much easier to then work towards those same bets, those same goals. When that wasn't always the case, like when I joined, and for several years thereafter, it was much more bottoms up. Like, it was a very famous product setup that's been replicated in many other places. And there I would say that was more challenging, and at the same time, a lot of the work there was building awareness, driving the context, so that people would understand, look, we have ultimately subscriber targets. We're all on the hook for that. And that's really what keeps us motivated. To be able to unlock some of that growth in XYZ markets, we need these things because of this other thing. This is the friction that we're facing, et cetera, et cetera. And so building that context, my experience has been working with product and engineering has been like, it's critical, because many times they sit several layers removed and they don't have that context. And the moment they do, they're much more willing to then want to work on it because they realize the value of it. And at the same time, and that is more when there's more autonomous roadmap setting and just like, deciding what to work on. I think we've moved on from that. Of course, we still drive a ton of, sharing the context, so people obviously understand why we're doing certain things. But I think that now happens much more at a top level, like also just defining what are those key bets that we're going to do, and all of the context is coming into there. So everybody just aligns much faster, I would say. So those would be the things. But yeah, sometimes it is tricky. And like you say, it depends a lot on the characters sometimes as well. And people wanting to collaborate more or less. And for that, it's building those bridges, right? And making sure that you give the context and understand also their perspective. What are they working on? What are their pressure points? And can you find any points in common? Or maybe sometimes you just need to be patient. I remember for a few years, there were a ton of different payment methods we required in multiple markets, because we had launched the world, or we had launched a bunch of markets. Maybe we hadn't launched the world yet. And we had tons of friction on the payment side, but we needed to redo our whole payment stack. And as part of that, there was going to be an API so that we could then, ship new payment methods much faster. But that meant we needed to hold tight, and maybe for a year or 18 months, be patient that, a lot of the things we were requesting were not going to come through because they didn't have the bandwidth. Similar, like we've done a lot of work on offer-led growth marketing. It's a great way to reduce the friction and bring users into the funnel. And we see great retention from it. We've tested enormously into that. We didn't talk about it today too much, but we've tested a lot, and we continue to test into it, depending, to really qualify the traffic and the users that come in, to then have higher intake, but also retain well. And depending on the market, depending on the payment method, depending on the seasonality, those things will make it, and depending on the user and the characteristics, will mean different results. So I think one of the things we've invested in a lot with product and has been on tooling, and toolings to drive more operator autonomy. And sometimes it's taken a while, and therefore you need to be patient, but then it has a huge unlock when you finally build that tool, and there's like, okay, now you can scale significantly more your efforts, but maybe it was like a good 9 months or 10 months of waiting.
Can you give an example of tooling? Like what's like 1 or 2 tools that were built that enabled your team to really run faster?
One of them, for example, is this offer tool that we have, whereby before a decade plus ago, every time we wanted to do an offer, we would have to ask product to code it. We no longer need to, we no longer need,
An
yeah.
in-app offer, an in-app offer.
Yeah, an in-app
The
offer for
user is
premium.
trying to get them to upgrade to a
Yeah,
plan.
yeah. And so obviously talking about maturing tactics, that was one we were seeing this, this works really well. we need to scale it, and we need to be able to scale it across all of the regions that we're launching, all of these key markets. So that would be probably one of the most powerful ones, I would say. And then there's been other tools here or there that are a bit smaller, but I think that would be one of the main ones I would call out.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other one, I guess, is like, I mean, on the CRM side, we've built the stack all internally, not with one of the external providers. And so a lot of tooling has been developed for that. And still there's a lot of potential and opportunities to develop that further.
Yeah.
And that's been tied in hand with the fact that we realize that the in-app comms and obviously, also offline are super powerful. So we need to make sure we're able to scale that for all of the boots on the ground that we
Yeah.
have and all of our global teams as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That must be just incredibly, incredibly fun for them, for that life cycle team to have these tools at their disposal. It's like the fact that they can I'm assuming they can run like custom messaging and campaigns to people in a particular region within Spotify. Like how fun that must be for them. Again, I just think about all the life cycle marketers that I've known over the years and using third party tools. And I mean, it's not quite the same thing as having like top down direction we want, and support. We want to let's empower these teams with tools that are robust and allow them to be more effective in their job. I think I will tell you as a marketer, everything, just this conversation, everything you talk about that's been going on there for the past 12 years from your experience, it just sounds like what a phenomenal place to do growth in. Just overall, and maybe marketing as a whole. It just sounds like an incredibly, incredibly fun company to work with. They've supported you. I mean, I understand from the starts bottoms up, and then you get top down support. But the fact that they empower you and support you to the degree that they do, and you have tight collaboration with product, and they support you, it just sounds like on really just a phenomenal company and a phenomenal experience that you've been having. And I really do appreciate you coming and sharing some of your story. Is there anything else, like, from your experience? Like, I always like to ask if there's, like, a piece of advice that you would offer to growth marketers that anything that's, from your experience, like, what would that be? What would you share with people?
I think one of my key advice that we haven't talked about is who you hire and how you lead plays a huge role in then the team you build and the impact that it has. I had the luxury of being able to build that team from scratch and set the culture very intentionally because of that hiring. And so what I would say is like make sure you're hiring with, folks that have curiosity, creativity, business acumen for sure to be able to like discern where the opportunities are that I'm going to go for. And then just have like a bias for action because they're driven by impact. And you see that in the conversations you have. And not everybody's driven by impact. Some folks prefer to be a bit more analytical, and deep in the weeds. Some others really want to just like, spend a lot of time on the strategy. And this is a very sweet spot of wanting to be analytical and have a strong strategy and then make it happen. So I think that is one of the things that for me has been a huge like pillar of success. The other thing is the leadership style you have. For me, I have a secure based leadership style, which means the people in my team know I have their back. They know that everyone else has their back. And at the same time, we want them to think, I want them to think boldly and act boldly and take risks. And that is super important, particularly when you have a white canvas and you're category building and you're trying to figure things out. It's key to try new things and really, go a little bit, yeah, basically take those risks. And you won't do that if you're not in a trusted space where you feel like, folks have your back. So for me, I think that is pretty critical. And it's something that we've built that has been amazing. We're all distributed by nature because it's an international team. So also, how do you think about that? What are the rituals that you build and those touch points that you build to make sure that it's a very tight knit team, which in our case it is. A lot of it for me, I think, has been spending time together in, condensed periods of time to like flesh out your strategy, talk through the problems, and then obviously have just team building time. That has really built a strong team and team culture. And then having that continuous, continuous feeling that I can take bold risks and if I fail, it's okay. Or what matters is that we learn and obviously have fun along the way. And many of them will also drive impact, and we know it. And if they don't, it's okay, you know? So I think that is one of the things that it's maybe softer than, yeah, this is a KPI you need to go for or whatnot. But for me, I think it plays a huge role. And I've seen it firsthand in the team we've built with super high tenure actually. People have stayed around for a long time and very excited and still, hungry and keen with very, very good engagement scores, even when we have tougher times. So yes, I think those would be my two pieces of advice. The type of person, the type of people that you hire, and that would be the type of people I would hire, and also making sure you build a culture where people can take risks and feel secure, and can thrive.
Yeah. Those
That's how
are
you'll get your biggest unlocks, really.
I yes, they're both great pieces of advice, and it really does start with, building a very, very strong team, and if you're not quite there, being willing to make adjustments until you've got, that core team in place that can run, right, and operates in a similar manner and trusts each other and can really run and go have fun and try new things and take risks, and both great points. Both great points. And, I'm sorry, because I've been there and it's like, when you're there. And
Yes.
if you're not sure if you're there, you're not there.
You're not there.
You're not there.
Yes,
When you're there, you're like, "Oh, man, what is happening right now?" It's like magic is being made, and it's very much about, sustaining that culture, sustaining the risk taking, sustaining the trust, and to be able to do this, because I know from my experience once in my life, to be able to build that and sustain that for years with long tenured employees who are excited and motivated and fresh every day, that is very, very that is, probably the number one challenge that for leadership. It really is. But when you're there, and if you're not sure if you're there, you are definitely not there.
exactly. Yes, I agree. Collective effervescence.
Yes. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining. Super insightful.
Thank you for having me. This was really fun.
I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to, to share some of your story.